Hi, I wanted to thank the Acton Democratic Town Committee for inviting me and Himajah to speak. My name is Franny Osman, and I've lived in Acton since 1995. I've served on the Council on Aging, the Cemetery Commission, and the Transportation Advisory Committee, and the Commission on Disabilities for many years. I'm right now the chair of those last two. I was a select board member in 2014 to 2017, and I want to serve again as a member of the select board. I've always felt like I would someday. A few months ago, I was attending one of the regional meetings I go to. I think it was one that was sponsored by our local 13-town planning region. And I was feeling very inspired by my colleagues, especially female colleagues that were select board members in many towns around me. And I was thinking, I think it's time. I think I'm ready to run. And at the same time, it feels like a time that I, with my skills, can bring to the town that seems to be struggling right now with exploring our values and exploring our commitment to anti-racism work. And I sort of just felt inspired to step in and bring those skills to the board. I have a lot of energy to devote to the job, and I have many experiences working, obviously, within the town, and I have a big heart, and I think that makes it easy for me to relate to people and work with people in different parts of town, not just within the town committees, but residents and business owners and people who come to Acton to use it in other ways, going to classes, using medical establishments. It comes naturally to me to listen to people who are hurting or slighted or harmed, or people who are angry. And I tend to have a lot of faith in people. And I feel that if somebody's experiencing some of this harm, I want to listen. And if I've played a role in that harm, I want to learn from it and move on in a better way. And I would like to see our whole town work that way. I grew up in Newton, Mass. I worked in biostatistics and lived in China for a year, teaching English to doctors and public health workers. So I've been very happy, actually, that our Chinese population has grown so much. I get a chance to practice my Chinese and feel at home. I feel very at home visiting Chinese friends. It's a familiar culture that I really enjoyed. And I came to Acton to build a co-housing neighborhood, which is designed in a way that we don't want people to just drive into their houses and disappear. We want to cross each other's paths, participate in common activities in our common house, and work together. And I've been really grateful how involved people have been in the outer world, and as well as contributing to our own neighborhood. So do you want to ask me the questions?
Thank you. Yes. I didn't want to stop you, but I have to stop you. So
no, it's good.
Question one. What skills or experiences do you have that helped you prepare for service on the select board?
Well, serving on the select board is one very good experience, but I would say that my skills separate out into three different areas. One is as a convener of people, and I love to learn from people. I love asking people questions, and I could go all day meeting a stranger and asking them a question and listening to their answer and asking them more about their background and their experiences. And after I convene a group, and I've been a part of forming a lot of groups, I'm able to sustain it by forming a team and delegating to other people if I can't continue in the same role as I did at the beginning. So I like to bring people together. Another skill is summing up data. That comes into play not only in my work, but in my hobbies, which are writing and drawing. When I write poetry, I have to do the same thing of trying to distill down. I studied biology undergrad, and then I studied public health because I wanted to bring people and science together. And later, after working in the pharmaceutical industry, I decided to get a degree in education. I was thinking I was going to become a teacher, and it was at Harvard Graduate School of Education in mid-career math and science. But quickly I remembered that I don't like getting up early, and I realized I didn't want to be a teacher. But I noticed that I was taking all my electives in an area of summing up data. So I ended up focusing on program evaluation. And the third is leadership and group process through my community, through an organization called Women Outdoors that I've been on the board or editor of the magazine for over 30 years, probably coming close to 40 years. I have, and in my in the town, in my community, I've done a lot with just organizing, following Robert's rules, or working by consensus. Just, it's been a good education.
Thank you. And question 2, in 3 to 5 years, what would you see as 2 specific accomplishments in Acton resulting from your leadership in the upcoming term?
I apologize. I could only break it down to 3 rather than 2. So I decided to take a chance. One is that I want to help us get through the period we're in of intense learning. People of color know what the difficulties are of living in Acton as a person of color. People who are lower income or vulnerable in other ways know what their experiences are. And I want to make sure that we've incorporated all the values that we're now talking about. We're making sure that our committees have representation, which they do, a lot of them now. And our Board of Selectmen has in the past. Right this minute, we don't have racial diversity, but we have for many years. And I want to make sure that we really are represented by the diversity of our community in all ways, in race, ethnicity, age. I just think it's really important that people see themselves in town and have voices. So I want to see that we've made progress. I want to get away from this period of now, which is a period of deep learning, I think, for the community. And I hope we come out of it peacefully and supportive. The second is bikes and pedestrians. I want us, in 3 to 5 years, I would hope that we have a safer community, slower traffic, more sidewalks even. We've done a great job. More bike connections. I founded a group called Neshoba Regional Greenways, which is, I keep looking at you, Ellen, but I'm realizing I should be looking at that camera. So I apologize to everybody else except Ellen's little face there, that I'm probably looking like I'm looking down. The Neshoba Regional Greenways is trying to make connections between paths and between towns. And recently we took a walk through Concord and Acton trying to make that connection. And the third is a more vibrant business community. I think it's really important to help the tax burden, which it's crept up to 90% of our taxes being paid by residents. And if we can bring more businesses in, even with them still paying the same rate, it would take some of that burden off the residents. And it would make it a place that the young people who have come here, unfortunately, during a pandemic, but fortunately for the whole town, we have a lot more younger people living here, would enjoy living here more. And the older people that we want to keep in town would be able to live here more with that vibrant business community. So that's the other change I would like to see.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Number three, service as a member of the select board will require you frequently to consider, form conclusions, and ultimately vote on a wide range of issues affecting all town residents. What experiences have you had in the past that will inform the way you will represent the community?
Wow. I mean, there's just so much that's shaped my life. I grew up with parents who put a big value on justice. And they always told us about where we came from. My mother was always welcoming people from other cultures to live with us. and helped some relatives immigrate from the Soviet Union. And my mother would volunteer to help newly settled immigrants. She was a language teacher, first Russian, and then when the Russian program died at Brookline High School, she taught German and then English as a second language. And she really knew what it was to have recently arrived. And I would hear about our family, my cousins in Russia. I actually got to visit them when I was 10 and then again when I was 28. There were these two boys who had lost their parents when they were 8 and 10 to Stalin. And I would always hear the stories. I was haunted as a child about the situation that my relatives there were living in. And so to see now some of these relatives immigrate and other people, I really had a sense of what it takes to newly arrive. And my relatives were involved in unions. And like all families, we've had our share of physical and mental illness. And I think just seeing how grateful I am for the resources I have to deal with those issues gives me a compassion and an empathy for other people going through crises, which people always are in town, in our town. And I really feel for them, and I feel I can listen and help make our services better to be able to respond to them as best we can so everybody can live a quality life.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Franny, and thank you.
You're welcome. Actually, Ellen, I just noticed, I was also thinking about my experience recently. I helped form the Acton Boxborough Diversity Coalition, which moved into other groups. And now I'm a member of the Acton Boxborough United Way Racial Justice Coalition. So that work has been very important to me. And the people I've met through that have been very meaningful to me. Anyway, so now I will end, and thank you very much for having both me and Himajah, who I've really enjoyed getting to know over the last month or so.
But I ran because of the W.R. Grace groundwater contamination, and I had studied on 1,1-dichloroethylene. Boy, I knew my platform. And then I got elected, and one of the first issues that came before the board was a dog issue. And two neighbors were complaining over the dog, and I suddenly discovered that the Board of Selectmen has the power to put dogs down. And I had never, ever, ever faced a question on the death penalty for puppies. And Fido was like, you know, they didn't prepare me for this when I was a candidate. So I would like to ask both candidates, if you've got two neighbors and one has a dog and the other doesn't, and the one of the neighbors comes before the Board of Selectmen and says, you know, you've got to put this dog down, how would you approach that issue? Death penalty for dogs.
I could go first because I had to experience that too, Greg. I also was surprised by those things, the alcohol hearings, the trees being threatened, and the dog issues. And they're very, very painful. And I was very grateful, as in all of the issues that we dealt with on the board, I was always very grateful for the staff. We have such an amazing town staff. And I have to say that that's one of the reasons I want to run again. I really love working with them. So it's very helpful to have a dog officer and the police department to help advise on those really hard issues. But I definitely had to turn. We had to be creative. You know, we had at one point, you know, a dog that had killed another dog. And so we had to be creative and require a certain amount of protection so that he had double gated prevention from getting out of his house. And we tried everything we could do to not have to put down a dog. I don't think we had to put down a dog in the several hearings I went to, but it was always a question of that balance between someone's right to be safe and someone's right to enjoy their dog. So I'm with you on that being one of the hard things.
The strangest event I ever encountered as a selectman was getting called at midnight by the fire chief, being told that there was a styrene leak at the WR Grace plant in South Acton, and that within minutes, most of South Acton and a good chunk of West Concord could be a hole in the ground, because the chemicals were incredibly volatile. And so at midnight, as the chair of the board, I had to order the evacuation of a good chunk of the town. So, you know, this is, I guess, a variation on the 3 a.m. in the morning call that is often asked in presidential campaigns. But what is the biggest crisis that you've had to deal with? And are you cool under fire?
I hope I never have to deal with a large thing, but you never know when it comes along, especially in this climate environment. We're likely to have more storms and more periods of drought or flooding or other issues that come up. And we are working, and I've been involved with a lot of work in the sub-region I talked about of our planning region called MAGIC, in trying to mitigate and respond to some of these issues. When I was on the select board, we didn't have any major immediate things. I kept asking myself at the beginning of the pandemic, wow, you know, what would I be doing? And I did, you know, if I was on the board at that time. I did, through helping Dan Cena with telephone calls. I was inspired by Tammy Gavea's office making calls to people, and I got the voter list and organized a bunch of people to make calls to people in Dan's region. And it felt very important to me, and I was really happy to see that there were other ways of reaching out that were going on through public safety and through the senior center. And I think it's really important to try to use those reverse 911 or some kind of registry. What I've learned from being on the Commission on Disabilities is that we don't have a list of people who might be less mobile or stuck at home. And I think the pandemic has really helped us. In some ways, it's comforted me. It's in a strange way that I saw us rise to the occasion. I saw the town do an amazing job at offering services, at bending rules of enforcement of some of the zoning bylaws, other ways that we were flexible, and that the town staff just really came through, and various organizations, the Acton Boxborough United Way and the Neighbor Brigade, all sorts of volunteer groups came through and really helped people in that time. So I have confidence that if we have a big problem, and I hope we don't, when I helped find that trail recently through the WR Grace property, the person that was there from representing WR Grace assured us that that section north of the tracks was clean. We saw the areas that had been, and people were talking about that styrene event. So hopefully we won't have that, but whatever we have that comes through, I believe that we will be able to handle it. And I tend to be cool on my feet. I tend to be the person that just sort of says, okay, what are we going to do? Rather than freaking out.
Wanted to say that I wish both of you could be on the select board. I am so impressed with both of you. Thank you.